Your graduation is tomorrow.
Oh my God, it is?
It would be very nice if you win.
Has it ever occurred to you that we might want to go?
Then I missed the Golden Ghost Marathon.
What are we doing today? An STD check?
The condom broke. He sent me a message. I tested HIV positive Monday. How long does somebody in my position have to wait? 90 days.
All I ever wanted was a boy to dry hump me in the back of his dad's Prius. Now that dream is dead.
You're gonna be okay.
Am I?
Hey everyone, it's Anthony Allen Ramus. All right, so the film 3 Months tells the story of a queer teenager named Caleb who is exposed to HIV just as he's about to graduate high school. Then he has to wait 3 months to get tested for the disease. Today, I'm so excited to be chatting with the film's stars, Troye Sivan, who stars as Caleb, and Javier Muñoz, who plays his doctor, and then also Jared Frieder, who wrote and also directed the film. This film, I'm so excited to chat with you all about it because I feel like, and Jared, we can talk about this, but it's been a process to get to this point, and I know that you've got to be thrilled to be here. But Troye, thinking about the kind of films that you make, I'm thinking back when we talked during Boy Erase time. You obviously, it's so important for you to make films that are important, that touch on these important queer issues that are affecting, our LGBTQ community. Tell me about this film and why it was one that you wanted to, be a part of telling the story.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think for me, it's kind of a subconscious thing that I gravitate towards projects that I feel can help progress a conversation. I think it's like the reason why I like it so much is making stuff can sometimes feel a little bit like frivolous. I'm like, oh, we're making a movie and playing pretend, or I'm like writing a song, like it's a pop song or whatever, And so I think being able to kind of like take what I love and feel like it might actually kind of affect some sort of change or show someone themselves on the screen, that just feels so much more exciting to me. And then I got sent the script by Jared. Jared and I knew each other from like parties, and I knew Jared as like sweet Jewish Jared who loves pop music, and I'd like to think of myself as sweet Jewish Troye who likes pop music. And so we always like bonded over that. And Jared sent me the script, and I think I was like on tour or something like that it took me a rude amount of time to get to it. And when I finally did, I had no idea where the project was like in standing. And literally within what was like 2 or 3 days after I read it, we were like making the movie. And so I just loved the script. I fell in love with Jared's voice and Caleb's voice, and I fell in love with Caleb as a character. He's got this like kind of tough exterior. He's kind of a brat sometimes, but he I think is just the biggest sweetheart at his core. And I was really touched by the relationship between Caleb and Dara, and then of course the idea that this could, like I said, help progress a conversation that I think is a super, super, super important one, and one that for some reason, even though it's been as long as it's been, is something that's still kind of shrouded in like secrecy and shame and just a lot of ignorance, and so, yeah, I just couldn't wait to be a part of it.
Well, thank you for that. You mentioned, and that's so important because so much of the work that we're doing at GLAAD is to really erase that shame, to get rid of the stigmas around people, living with and are affected by HIV. So Javier, for you, I would imagine, getting an opportunity to be a part of this had to be especially impactful. You play the doctor that comes in and meets with Caleb every month, those 3 months that we talked about. What was it like for you to, be a part of telling this story?
Oh gosh, this hands down is one of the most important projects I think I've ever been a part of. And the most meaningful in terms of its mission, its purpose, why it exists. To sort of jump on some of the things, Troye, that you said is the conversations that this can begin, and the impact this can have, because this isn't a dirge. This isn't heavy dark, weighted storytelling surrounding HIV and AIDS that we've seen time and time again, which is valuable and important. Those journeys happened, and we need to remember them and recognize them and acknowledge them. We also need to acknowledge where we are and the hope that still exists when you test positive, and the fullness of life that you can have. And I think that's so, the movie is hilarious. I watched it twice, to be quite honest, because I loved it that much. And it's there's so much joy. There's so much love and friendship and support, and that kind of full life as a message going out there. I absolutely wanted to be part of this. I had to be part of this. And Jared and I had this beautiful meeting when he told me our first meeting about the film. And I was so moved by all of it that it just was a no-brainer. It's like this was the universe handing me something, not an actual choice I had to make.
Yeah, and I also watched it twice, and it is so much heart and so many important topics, but also a lot of fun, entertaining. Let's go to sweet Jewish Jared, who likes pop music, if you may. Jared, you know, this is a very personal story. You know, like I mentioned, director, writer on this project, and I know that it took a long road to get to this. I think it was a film, then it was a series, and then it was back to a film, and then a global pandemic happened. Tell me about how you're feeling now that literally the world will be able to finally see the story.
I mean, it's pretty surreal. It hasn't hit me yet. I feel like it will, hopefully, when it comes out, or maybe never. But you know, sweet Jewish Jared knows that like our people wander through the desert for 40 years until and I feel like this has been like wandering through my desert for 40 years. I wrote the screenplay like 8 or 9 years ago. And it has really been such an incredible journey to get it actually made with literally my dream cast. And it's sort of not something, even the making of this film is not something that's hit me yet. And I'm like already just really emotional from hearing Javier talk right now, as I was when I flew to New York to meet with him about this part. He was like the first person we cast in the film, just because I'm so inspired by him. So, and Troye's, unfortunately, I've been a fan of Troye for far too long. I mean, I admitted to him much later in our working relationship that I feel like I was at his first show at the Roxy like 100 million years ago. I don't know when that was, Troye, but like, so this was like it was every dream actor I had for every single role coming together to make this film. The whole thing's been magic.
It is an amazing cast. I want to talk about Ellen Burstyn later. I mean, just iconic. Troye, thinking about you, Jared said he was a fan going to your shows, but you do have such a wide and young and loyal fan base who you know that they're going to tune in to watch this movie because you're in it. And I think there's such an opportunity for people to have their hearts and minds opened up to, this story. What do you want people, your fans that watch this on Paramount Plus, February 23rd, everyone, don't forget. What do you want them to take away from Caleb and this story that Jared has told?
I mean, I think like the thing that kind of gagged me when I first read the script was that you truly, truly feel like he's going to be okay. You know that he's going to be okay, no matter what, and that in itself is just, I think, so powerful. And it's something that a lot of people don't know, you know what I mean? And also I would say the majority maybe of the people who like engage with my music or whatever are LGBT, but there's also a large portion of people who aren't. And they really don't know a lot at all. Like when I talk to my straight friends about this medication that I take, PrEP, they're like, oh, what is that? Like they truly have no sense of, I'm sure some people do, but a lot of people really don't, of like the state of HIV today and what it looks like today. And like Javier said before, it's like we've been told stories very few of them from kind of like a more sort of current perspective, you know? And so I really, really hope that people like learn a lot. But also I think the thing that excited me so much about this project was how like accessible it felt and how fun it felt, and, you know, how joyous it felt. And, you know, I think that, like, to me, humor has been such a coping mechanism my entire life. And it feels like a very queer coping mechanism to me, you know, like, I think that, sure, we could have made kind of this like deep, serious, dark movie about a really serious issue. But it feels very kind of like subversive and queer and cool to me and realistic and true to like also laugh about it and kind of like bond in the experience through humor. And so the fact that this movie, I think, is hopefully going to appeal to young people and be like a really easy, fun watch, I think makes it like more powerful as a tool, you know, to kind of like spread this message. So yeah, that's exciting to me.
It's so important. And I think with media, and that's so much of the work that we do with GLAAD, is really, you know, fighting for these accurate representations. But we are really at a point where we want to see people, stories of people living and thriving and being successful who have HIV. And I think it's so important that projects like these are made. Like you said, it's not, you know, the dark, serious, horrible story, which, you know, those are obviously a part of our history. But I think now we can, you know, look into this kind of stuff. Javier, for you, can you imagine for you, if this movie existed for you maybe 20 years ago, what do you think that would have meant for you to see something like this?
My gosh. I mean, I'm trying to even imagine that, because it's so to imagine a film like this accessible on, I mean, we weren't streaming back then, but let's say accessible without necessarily needing cable, you know, right? Something that really could reach people. I think this, oh God, I think this would have blown me away 20 years ago. I really do. You know, it is that unique perspective that us older folks have of surviving the 80s and the 90s and losing so many people, and that whole journey to arrive to this point where this is a treatable, you know, virus. This is, my life is full. I'm taking one pill a day, you know, like we're having full lives, full careers, making dreams come true, you know, like that, the whole idea of this, just thinking about this film existing 20 years ago, I think it just would have blown people's minds, because it would have given so much integrity and dignity to this journey. And it would have demanded that everyone see the humanity of this and not just what it was 20 years ago, you know, and so cold and so just immersed in stigma. You know, this really would have rocked some people's minds and hearts, and it's still going to. But I think back then it certainly would have had a intense impact and changed some minds for sure.
Jared, what's your reaction to hearing that?
I'm like really emotional. That's just sort of all I wanted to do, you know. That's sort of why I wanted to be a filmmaker and a storyteller, to sort of provide people with a way to feel less alone, especially like young queer kids. Like, I did this for like the 15-year-old me. Like, I fucking wish we had movies like this, you know, and we did. They were just hard to find. And for me, like, and I think both Javier and Troye have said this, but like, being queer means taking your trauma and turning it into humor as a way to cope with the way that the world boxes you in, and to take that tone and that humor and that joy for life and put it in this film. I wish I would have had that. And I wish Javier and Troye, I wish we could have all had that. And I think we have such an amazing opportunity now to tell those stories in that way. And just make people feel less alone. Like, that's why I go to the movies, you know, like to step into someone else's shoes for like 2 hours and empathize with a different human experience, and or a human experience that you have that you feel like no one else in your world does, and you watch it and you're like, wow, there's someone like me, you know, there's a way to see what my life might look like that's not full of trauma and sadness, but is full of love and joy and endless possibility. And so it makes me emotional because, you know, that's why I do this. So
yeah, no, and you know, thinking about that, Troye, coming back to you, because we know how important representation is, and when you see something on screen or on TV and it really just resonates with you, you know how impactful that is. Troye, was there ever something when you know that you watched on TV or a book that you read or a movie that you saw that really just kind of helped you and hit home when it comes to, you know, your queer identity?
So it was a weird time because when I was like coming out to myself, I feel like there was definitely stuff being made. You know, I remember catching Queer as Folk one night on TV when my family was asleep, and I was like shaking and, you know, like I couldn't handle watching it. But I also couldn't look away, you know. But honestly, like I don't know if it's because I lived with my family and we were all kind of so on top of each other. I didn't feel comfortable. Like if there was a queer story on TV, I honestly would like kind of run away from it. And so for me, it was all, I was lucky that I had YouTube. You know, YouTube came out in 2007 when I was in grade 7. So I was about to go into high school. And that was really where I started to kind of see representation for the first time, that I started to see people that reminded me of myself, you know, and coming out stories. That I think was that sort of like genre of YouTube genuinely completely changed my life. And also you hear really real experiences, you know, it's like every kind of experience, from people who were kicked out of home to people who had, you know, kind of like the dream coming out of everyone being supportive and a really loving and supportive family and friends. And so I just spent hours and hours and hours watching those videos, and those were really kind of like what shaped me. I think that was the media that shaped me.
Javier, for you, anything that you ever, you know, back in the day watched or saw that really just helped you kind of with your journey?
I think it was, you know, I think for me it was music. It wasn't really, that was the media that reached me the most. Everyone that I had in my life who was LGBT at the time, that's almost like how we communicated. I mean, that's what we did. We went out, we hung out, and it was music. It was music. It was music, and it was in those songs that I found culture, and I found representation. I saw dignity, and I saw it gave me a being in those are surrounded by such incredible music and musicians and dancers and singers. It was just all fantastic, right? And that's a kind of, you know, elegance and a kind of integrity and pride that's built into all of that. So that's really that's where I go to. I wasn't really seeing very much on TV and film, but it was always playing in my ears wherever I went, for sure.
Love that. I mean, I know, because in the music, I'm going back to the Scissor Sisters scene where you're dancing, but we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
It's so good. Jared, you know, for you, in case anyone is not, you know, fully aware, this is a very personal story inspired by, you know, your own personal experience. How closely is what we see, you know, in the film, how close is that to really what happened to you and what, you know, what you went through?
I would say it's like inspired by, but it's not super close. I mean, at my heart, I am a Miami girl. I come from Florida, for better or for worse, mostly for worse. And I'm not Orthodox, but I grew up in an Orthodox community with a lot of people who were super conservative around me. And so while the story with Caleb, and spoiler alert, his mom isn't my story, it's the story of a lot of my friends and people that I knew. But for me, it's like the emotional truths of this that hit very, very close to home and are super parallel with both the experiences that I've went through and also the experiences that so many of my friends have went through, which is just trying to overcome the shame that's sort of been instilled in us about HIV, and also just being gay and being queer. And that has sort of affected me and my mindset so much so that when I went through this experience, when I was graduating college, not high school, and a condom broke, I had to sort of face my demons and realize that, one, this is not a death sentence anymore and people can live full, happy lives with it. And the reason that I didn't know that was because of sort of the shame and bigotry and prejudice and homophobia that sort of was born with the HIV/AIDS pandemic in the 80s and 90s, and how, especially in the public school system in Florida that I was raised on, I was not given accurate information about what it was like to live with HIV and what that experience was like. So it was like a pretty big teaching moment and life growth moment for me. So that is very true to my experience. But I do have to shout out my parents, who are literally the best in the world. And my mom is very much like the Ellen Burstyn character, the grandma, and my father is very much like the Louis Gossett Jr. character. Yeah, that home life was sort of built around drama and melodrama, because, honey, that's what I love. That's where I thrive. It's what draws us in. So my parents were like, please talk about Impress that we're not evil. And I was like, okay, cool, got it.
You're all check, good. We love mom and dad.
Yeah.
You brought up Ellen Burstyn. Troye, coming back to you. Ellen Burstyn plays Caleb's grandmother. And without spoiling too much, there's a scene where Caleb goes and basically says, Grandma, this is what's up. This is why I've been acting out. This is why, I went through this experience. I don't know. I have to wait 3 months. And I think we're all expecting, an elderly woman to be like completely horrified, and then it's the complete opposite, which I think is so beautiful to see. Troye, what was it like to get to work with, Ellen Burstyn? I mean, because it's got to be pretty amazing.
I mean, yeah, I don't even know how to describe it, because I just feel like, I still haven't really like accepted in my head that I'm like an actor or anything like that. And so to work with someone with so much knowledge, like truly a titan and an absolute great, I was extremely intimidated, and then immediately put at ease, because she wanted to have like cheese and wine. She actually lived below me. We like lived in a duplex during the filming. And so I would like see her in the morning, and she invited me down to a little patio, and we had just like a meeting where we sat and talked, and I asked her, advice about, taking on this big challenge and about acting in general. And, the conversation like meandered, and we just really bonded and talked about life and family and relationships. And yeah, it was just such a surreal experience. And I really, really, really appreciate so much her being a part of this, and just her being like, just so open, to me. It was really, really, really nice.
Love that. I mean, wine and cheese with Ellen Burstyn sounds pretty good.
Crazy.
Javier, like we said, this film, the key, and one of the key parts of it is to really erase the shame, and get rid of the stigma that being HIV positive can have. What, obviously we want to have films like this. What else are the keys to kind of getting people to just understand and to get rid of these stigmas, once and for good? Because it's, a big priority for us at GLAAD, and I know we worked with you a lot on that, but, I would love for you to kind of remind us how we can, continue to do that.
Conversation, dialogue, getting out of the fear of saying some of this stuff out loud, or just talking about sex, sexuality, safe sex, talking about what HIV and what does it mean? I mean, the fact that there are people in this world that don't even know how it's transmitted, you know, and these are sexually active human beings, and more conversation, more dialogue, getting it out there, being comfortable about talking about all this stuff with accurate information, and literally making it something that's approachable, something that folks don't have to be scared to think about, talk about, ask about. And that not only is that just punching a giant wall, a giant hole in the wall of stigma, but it's also creating safer sex practices for everyone to feel comfortable to just talk about what we're all doing, and just, you know, let's just be able to like be joyous about it and talk about it and comfortable about it. And I that's really why I love the Doctor the most, is he is that comfortable to just, let's talk about it. And let's bond about it. Let's have a group about it. Let's have a group chat. Everybody, let's put it on the table. And I love that, because that to me, once, it's like anything, once you say the thing out loud, and once you're able to talk about something and feel safe doing so, it just eradicates the fear and the negativity and all the weight around it. Saying the things out loud is like really is a powerful weapon.
Could not agree more. So well said. And to that point, I think, Jared, coming back to you, I don't want to spoil anything because I'm one of the lucky ones that got to see it already. But for the world who hasn't seen it, you were very strategic with the ending. I will say that. Tell me about a little bit about why and how you wanted to go about kind of wrapping up the story the way that you did, without being too spoilery. Good luck. I'm like, good luck.
So what I'll say, with a wink, is that the first thing I knew when I dreamt, I woke up, it was like 2013, I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I had this writing assignment, and I free wrote the first 10 pages of this script, which had pretty much stayed the same over like 150 drafts, where I dreamt of this kid named Caleb and this experience that he was going through. And as soon as I finished that and went back to bed and woke up, the next thing I knew was the ending. It was one of the first things that came to me during this process. And it was important for the very reasons that Javi just said, because it would cause people to have conversations. It would start dialogues. It is a very specific and interesting ending that is meant to, again, you know, jump in the pool and splash around and say, look over here, look at this story that we haven't seen before. Look at this sort of ending. How do you feel about it? What do you think happens? You know, very, again, without giving too much away, to start, again, that dialogue is the purpose of this movie in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, I'm super stoked to see how people respond to the end of the film. I think it's...
Yeah, I know it is. And I watched it multiple times and I was like, yes. Okay. I was like, I think I've got it. But if that's not a tease to watch this film, people, I mean, come on, right? It's the ending. Before we wrap up, Troye, let's talk about music, because you also have music with this project, which we all love. Yeah, tell us like what about these songs and what it was like to kind of have your acting music worlds combine again, which we love.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just like the funnest challenge. You know, I sort of tried to write the songs like as Caleb, you know, and not just lyrically. I mean, obviously lyrically, it's like they're from his perspective and they are his story, which has been something that I've wanted to do for a really long time. Writing for film and TV sounds like the funnest thing in the world to me, and it was. But also like sonically, to be able to be like, okay, it's 2011, queer kid, what is he listening to? What does he think is cool? You know, like it kind of trying to get into that zone as well from like a production standpoint and a sonic standpoint. It was just so fun. Like I honestly feel like you could release these songs as like Caleb, you know what I mean? And as well as me. So yeah, it was just like a really fun challenge as a writer, and I loved it. Also, just a nice thing is it kind of takes the pressure off. I'm so used to getting into the studio and being like, God, I'm gonna have to like empty my guts right now onto the floor. And with this, at this point, by the time I was writing the music, I knew Caleb I felt so well and like so, intimately that it was about, and I had scenes that I could watch while I was in the studio and stuff. And so to kind of have all of this, like this world of information that wasn't from the usual places that I pull from, it was really fun for me. It was really nice.
I love that. And whose decision was it to put Any Which Way by Scissor Sisters in there? Because that is like my all-time favorite jam. So I was very happy.
Whose decision was it, Jared? We went through like a couple options.
We did. So our music supervisor, the amazing Linda Cohen, sent us that song. And most of the soundtrack is queer and by queer artists, which was something that was really important to me, just both to give opportunities to some of those artists, but also because it sounded and like sort of reflected Caleb's world, and sonically sort of fit thematically with what we were trying to say with the film. But we had gone through a couple song choices for that. And we got the Any Which Way, and I'm like such a Jake Shears stan. So I was like, oh, interesting. And we were like, maybe this could be the song. And one of our producers, Dan, played it on his phone. Do you remember this when we were filming one of the support group scenes in like the back? This was pre-COVID, where like everyone could huddle around a monitor, and like it was in the before times. Yeah. And we played Any Which Way, and we were all grooving. And then we noticed that like a PA and like a grip and like just random people who were in earshot of the song started like dancing, like without even knowing. They were just like moving to the song, and we all looked at each other and we were like,
that's the winner. Well, I definitely danced that song many times in 2011. So good job with that. So Jared, this is, such a special moment for you, but also for GLAAD, because every year we have the GLAAD list, which really represents the type of films that we want to see studios producing. And in 2019, this script, 3 months, was one that was on that list. So, I mean, first off, tell me about, that being selected for that, but then also kind of here we are 3 years later and a studio has made the film.
It was such an honor and continues to be. Franklin Leonard, who is the creator and founder of the Blacklist, which was a partnership for the GLAAD list, has been such a supporter of this story for so long. And I was on the 2014 annual Blacklist before. And when the GLAAD list came out, I was actually on there with a friend of mine, Matt Whitaker, who has an amazing script that was on the same year. And it's just a really beautiful gift for queer storytellers out here in Hollywood, who so often have an uphill battle to try and tell our stories, just because, the patriarchy is hard at work at all times. And to have an organization like GLAAD create a list that can just inspire us to keep going and to tell those stories, even though getting them made can be challenging. You never underestimate how much a tiny confidence boost to an artist and a creative can just fuel their spirit. And that's what the GLAAD list did for me. And I'm so grateful to have been on it. And I'm so excited it exists, both for advertising 3 months back in 2019, but also all the amazing scripts that they've done since. It's truly an honor.
Well, thank you for that. We're so happy that you wrote the story, and we're obviously so happy that now Paramount Plus has decided to make it. Thank you all so much for this conversation. I think the film is wonderful. I think the messaging is so spot on. It's so important. So yeah, thank you so much. And just a reminder, everyone, you can catch the premiere of 3 months on February 23rd, exclusively on Paramount Plus.